there.
You on the front row.
It's a wonderful thing to live in the community you grew up in, you went to high school in. It's a wonderful thing to see the guys that you knew when you were at the high school, and to be a part of a program in an evening like this. This is just a rare opportunity to have something like this, and I'm just very proud to be a part of it. If you're a coach and you did not fill out one of the biography sheets, if you coached 1 year in elementary school at Shayville, I still want you to fill out one of the sheets because we're keeping all these sort of as a historical record. So there's no comprehensive list easily attainable for the coaches in the county. So when you find a problem like that, you solve it by creating a list. So please get us that bio sheet. There's some of those at the table where the name tags were. So I want to introduce you briefly to the Wakulla County Historical Society. Almost every county or community has some people interested in history, but again, things don't just happen. You have to kind of organize and make things happen. So we formed a nonprofit tax-exempt organization in 1991, and we are a group of people with a lot of projects and not a lot of money to do those projects. So we do have applications here if you would be interested in joining the Historical Society. We would certainly appreciate that. It's a major source of our fundings. Without that and donations, we really wouldn't have money to do anything. All right. I don't know if I saw any people that are here. Now, I think I did see Cale Langston, a current school board member. I think there he is. Thank you for being here, Cale. Is there any other school board member here? Okay, we have our current superintendent of schools here, Bobby Pierce. He'll be introduced later on the panel there. And we have our incoming superintendent of schools here somewhere. I saw Rick. Okay, there he is. Okay, there he is. Okay, very good. We also have a couple of former officials I wanted to be sure to recognize here. So we have the superintendent of schools, Bill Payne. And Mr. Bill, if you would just show us here. And Bill was the superintendent back in the late 60s and early 70s.
From 68 through January the 3rd, 77.
There you go. Very detailed there for sure. But he was in the leadership role after, right after the high school opened and all. We also have one of the former principals of Wakulla High School here, and I hope I can pronounce his name right, Mr. Harold Thurman. He was the principal here in the 67, 68 year, which I think was the second year, or the 68, 69.
Twice. He was principal twice.
And again in the 80s as well, so yes. So we wanted to be sure to do that. So I just wanted to take a minute and wind up this welcome by giving you a sense of what got us to this point. There's 100 subjects out there that would be good for us to cover and to have a presentation on and to invite the community to, but I was a student at Crawfordville School and knew Mr. Mathis when it was the elementary school at that point, and he was the principal. And then I became friends with him, and that lasted throughout his whole life. And then I heard a lot of other people that had played under him when he was coaching and when it was high school, a little before my time. So I was always fascinated with that. Well, I was talking to Eric Mathis over there at their family home, and he was donating a couple things to the Historical Society. And we were just talking about how significant the contribution some of these folks made way back, investing in the lives of the young people here in the community, and how quickly it can be forgotten. And all of a sudden I realized, well, the Historical Society is the ideal vehicle to make sure that we don't forget those things. So I just want to make sure you understand that if things go well tonight, it's David Miller that gets the credit here. And if you notice that we don't cover some things, we are planning on having some additional, more specific programs that come out of this big, broad scope program in the future. So we're already excited about working on some of those before we even put this on All right, I guess one of the last things I would say is, coaches, they never lose that competitive spirit. You know, they can retire, but they still have that competitive spirit about them. And so as an example of that, David Miller is going to moderate the panel here. He's going to get everybody to introduce themselves on the panel here. He's still competitive. So I talked to him about moderating this, and he said, let me ask you something. He said, what is the longest program that you've ever had in the Historical Society? And I said, well, we had one that was like 1 hour and 28 minutes one time, and it was really kind of too long and all that. And he said, I could beat that, no problem. He's very competitive, and not only is he competitive, he's like, I want to know who had the longest record that I'm about to beat. And I said, well, it was you, Coach Miller. But anyway, that part's not exactly true, but I thought it's kind of good. But anyway, if people are interested in us discussing something, we certainly want the coaches to bring something to our attention. If they think of something that is pertinent to that, we are trying to be cognizant of time, because some of the folks on the panel are going to eat supper after this, and so the restaurant does close about 8:30, so we want to be there before they close, or at least stop taking orders. So if you have something you need to express, then as a coach, you speak up, and David will try to incorporate that into the discussion. Now, if somebody does get to talking too long, then I'm wearing the shirt, and I'm going to throw the flag. We're going to call it the delay of game penalty on you for that. So, be judicious with your words and with the time commitment there. But we thank you for being here tonight, and I'm going to turn it over to David Miller at this point, and then I'll be back up here at the conclusion.
If there is an appeal, that flag can be picked up, right? Now, the flag's really to remind me that I missed something. And I've got 4 or 5 pages of notes. This is like taking a bite out of an elephant trying to eat it, I tell you. The history of this school, particularly in athletics and excellence in coaching, is deep. And I'm just honored that Brent asked me to be a part of this, and being a student here meant a lot to me. Coaching here meant a lot to me. Being principal here meant a lot to me. Being superintendent meant even more. But just a little bit of information on Wakulla High School. It opened in 1967, and it was the consolidation and desegregation of Crawfordville, Shaeville, and Choppy. And now we're 56, 57. I wasn't strong in math. I can get somebody to tell me that, but the old building, as you know, is going to be demolished at some point in time. And I was talking with Mr. Pierce about the schedule for that, and he said it's probably going to be a 2.5 year process, and they'll probably get started fairly shortly. I think the goal is to let the gym stay for this basketball season, and then they may have to be on the road the next year. But this whole facility, the basketball auditorium, the basketball, all this wing here, the vocational wing out back, all the main part of the school where the English wing was, all of that, everything out to what we call the new building, which was built in 1995, is going to be gone. And the only thing that they're going to leave is the new, correct me, Mr. Pierce, if I'm wrong, is the new welding building. That's the only thing that's going to be left, if you know where that is. It's on the way back to where the new vocational center is. And what a find that was for us, and my commendation to Mr. Pierce and Ms. Sunny Chance, who wrote that grant and got a $20 million grant for that vocational. And that made Mr. Payne's heart flutter. Absolutely. Because vocational education is important, and it's even more in the highlight it was during his era, which he did a lot for vocational education. So, this building, the original building, which which includes everything you see here. And it doesn't include some of the buildings out back, like the old ACE building or the old vocational building. But the original plan was built in 1967. It cost $1 million. And the school board, I think, Willie Whaley was superintendent then. And what they did is we received funds every year, racetrack funds, and they bonded that and built the original Wakulla High School for $1 million. And Mr. Payne had a saying, things don't just happen, they're made to happen. And that's what happened. And the history of this school was, we had, the population center was south of Crawfordville. And so as such, 3 of the school board members resided in Sopchoppy's zone, school zone, and 2 resided in Crawfordville and Shadyville zone. And they were split. They were split. 2 wanted to build and 2 did not. And Dr. Whaley went to the board chairman, Edison Roddenberry. That's Mike Barwick's grandfather, in case people want to know that. And Mike's diligently working with the architect on the plans for this new school. And he'll be in charge of that project for Mr. Pierce and Mr. Meyer. But he was a swing vote. And they had a meeting of the minds. He was the chairman. And Dr. Whaley challenged him, and Mr. Payne will correct me if I'm wrong, because I got this information from him, but he said, you know, Edison, we need to do what's the best for the kids of this county.
That's right.
And you're the swing vote.
That's right.
So Wakulla High School almost didn't happen. Almost did not happen. And then when he voted 3-2, it passed. And here we went. So there's a lot of people that we want to talk about tonight. And before I introduce the panel, I want to talk some about some of the coaches. And we're going to have a special introduction on one coach because he's here tonight. But it's down at Sopchoppy, and these 2 guys to my left were probably 2 of the best athletes that played there, along with Ron Langston. And Ron Langston's here. Where's Ron? He's here tonight. He was another stellar athlete. But Red Sanders was a coach there, coached everything, and until 2 years before we consolidated, Houston Taft went down there as a baseball coach. And so they had 2 coaches, I guess. But, and Crawfordville was coached by Coach Matt Mathis almost the whole time since he came in '53. And Fletcher Harrell can give you the lowdown on Coach Mathis. But he coached until 1965, 66, 67. And a coach named Elmer Coker came to Crawfordville. And he's here with us tonight. And David Wilson, who was one of his athletes, is going to introduce him in just a second. But that was all the coaches that those 2 schools had. Now, Miss Bernie Gavin Rollins was one coach that we were able to get in touch with, and I understand she's still living and maybe not able to be here, but she was a girls basketball, y'all correct me if I'm wrong, was a girls basketball coach at Shadyville. And we reached out, and we couldn't get a whole lot of information. And a lot of this stuff was garnered from yearbooks, and some of it was told around information. But that was the 3 schools that consolidated to make Wakulla High School. Now, I'm going to introduce David Wilson to you, and I want to give you a bio on him. David Wilson was born in Apalachicola, I believe, and moved here. His dad, Vernon Wilson, was over Florida Power, and they moved to Crawfordville, and he played under Coach Coker and played quarterback and graduated there. In 1966, he married Martha Turner. Everybody knows Annie Ruth Perriman. Martha is the younger sister. And he graduated from Florida State in 71, Wichita State University graduate in 75. He served in the United States Air Force. separated with the rank of captain. He was assistant coach at Madison and Taylor County High School, and in which when he was at Taylor, he was with Coach Coker, I believe. And he was a head football coach and the dean of students. And in '82, I think he went back to Madison. Then '82 to 1990, he was the head coach, weightlifting coach in Middleburg High School. And then he went to Lincoln, Tallahassee Lincoln, in Tallahassee. And when he was there, he won 2 state championships, and that was in 1999 and 2001. He, like several other coaches that are up here, are in halls of fame. And there's not a greater honor than to be in the Hall of Fame. But he served on the coaching staff when he was coaching for 6 Florida versus Georgia high school all-star games. And he was inducted in the Florida Coaches Association, that's FACA Hall of Fame, Florida High School Association Hall of Fame, Florida Veterans Foundation Hall of Fame. And so he's a local boy, done good, was in the blue blood coaching in Tallahassee area. It's known statewide. So he did a tremendous job, and he's a friend. I was fortunate enough to play with him when I was a 9th grader. Of course, I didn't play; I sat on the bench. But Wilson played, and he's going to introduce a special guest tonight that was coach at Crawfordville, and that's Coach Elton Hooker. And so his nickname is Sharky, because our Plexico was the Sharks. My nickname's Tad, short for Tadpole. So Sharky, tell us a little bit about Coach Coker and a special guest tonight.
Well, as he mentioned, I was living in Apalachicola at the time, and Danny took the job as the manager of Florida Power Corporation here, and came here and so Coach Mathis in Apalachicola at the time, they were Chapman High School Sharks. So Coach Mathis gave me the name of Sharky, and it stuck with me with Crawfordville, and most of the guys have forgot about it except David. He keeps calling me Sharky. That's okay though. But I came here, and Coach Mathis at the time, I want to say something about him. It's okay, David. You know, when I came here, he coached football, basketball, baseball, and track, and drove the bus to and from all those basketball, football, baseball games. He drove the bus. He chaperoned dances after the football games. He worked in the concession stand and washed the uniforms. So, I mean, he was doing an awful lot, and at that time, Crawfordville, and I remember when I came here, he told me that Crawfordville was the smallest high school in the state that played tackle football. And I didn't know what to think about that at the time, but as I thought about it through the years, and really by him giving so many boys an opportunity to play football, I mean, he just got us on the right start. And but I come from Apalachicola, and Apalachicola was the dominant force in football back in those days. And Sopchoppy was the basketball dominant force because of JD, John David, and Randy up there. Now those, you know, you listen to coaches talk nowadays, and in coach talk, those were 2 dudes right there. Now, they could play. Those were 2 dudes, and they could play football and basketball, and they were difficult. And, you know, I will say this about the both of them, and I do believe that, you know, back in the 60s, Gary Padgett and Ron Sellers came out of Jacksonville, Paxson. And they were all the guys that talking about the combination of passing and receiving. And John David, I want to get with you and talk about, I said, John David, that's what he was in high school. And then after high school, he became JD. But anyway, you know, Ron Sellers and Gary Padgett were all the talk of the state of Florida in high school. But I would say this to you, if those guys had lived in an urban area, they would have been the talk of the state of Florida because they were doggone good. And they really were in football and basketball, the same thing. So they were 2 dudes, and they were hard to control. Matter of fact, we didn't control them. But anyway, so then Coach Mathis, I'm going to tell one story, David, about Coach Mathis. I'm sitting in English class, and English ain't my favorite subject by any choice. And so all of a sudden there's a knock on the door, and I look up, and there's Coach Mathis standing out there in the hallway, and he says, gives me the come here signal. So Patricia York was my English teacher, and I went up to Miss York and said, Miss York, Coach, Mr. Payne, you can close your ears now. He said, I said, Coach Mathis wants to see me. So I go out, she said, all right, go ahead. I go out there, and he says, you want to go to track meet over in Bristol today? I said, track meet? Coach, I ain't never run no track. I don't know anything about track. He says, well, son, I said, what do I do? I said, I don't have a uniform or anything. I'll get you a uniform. Don't worry about that. And I started asking him a little more. Finally, he said, son, let me ask you one question. Do you want to get on that bus with me, or you want to go sit back in that English class? I said, Coach, I'll get on that bus. So, but Coach Mathis did all that, and because of him, there's a lot of guys that got opportunity to play, and you know, he's just a wonderful man. And you know, I had coaches, Coach Wagner down out of Wakulla, and Coach Mathis, and then Coach Coker. And one thing I want to say about all of them is they were good community men, they were Christian men, all of them. They were active in their churches, and they were great role models in their community. And all three of them had wonderful wives that allowed them to coach. And so I think all these coaches up here know that you've got to have a good wife if you're going to be a coach and stay in the business very long. So you got to have a great wife. But Elder Coker came here, and he became the football and basketball coach. And you know, Crawfordville was beginning to grow and getting a few more athletes, but and actually there were only 3 winning seasons in the history of Crawfordville High School. But if you look at the teams they were playing Madison, they were playing Monticello, they were playing Bluntstown, a lot of bigger schools, and they were having a hard time competing with them. But anyway, as time went on, Crawfordville began to grow a little bit. And then Coach Mathis stepped down from football and basketball, and Elmer came in and coached football, basketball, and track. But the football program was my senior year, was his first year, and we had the second winning season in Crawfordville High School history. And then the third year, or Elmer's next year, Crawfordville High School was the mythical state champions in Class C. And they beat Greenville, and Greenville challenged Crawfordville to a game, saying it was for the Class C state championship. And Crawfordville won 12-0. Now, part of that was also that year, Crawfordville was 7-0 after 7 games. 7-0, and they had not been scored on. And then went to Weewa-Hitchiga, and where's that referee? Some of them referees over in Weewa-Hitchiga were, you know, I guess they had a favorite. I think they were from Port St. Joe or Panama City. But they, anyway. But Elmer did a wonderful job of coaching, and he, you know, like I said, Coach Mathis was near the end of his career, and he was a veteran, by the way, he was a veteran of the United States Navy, served during World War II. And Elmer came in, and Elmer turned the program around, got us on the right foot, and sent all those kids off to Wakulla High School, where they had the continued success. Elmer has meant many things to me in my lifetime. He is the second most influential man in my life, and you know, he has had a greater impact on me than any other man other than my father. And he has been elected in the numerous Taylor County Hall of Fame and the Florida Coaches Association Hall of Fame, and well deserved. And but the Crawfordville team that he coached in '66, which was the last team ever, it was the only team in Crawfordville history to ever beat Apalachicola. And I'm not sure if Sept ever beat Apalachicola. So there was only Wakulla County team to beat Apalachicola. And Apalachicola was a dominant football force in those days. So Elmer really did some great things here. He coached track. First year here, the track team, they were 3rd in the state. And then his last year here, coached track team, they were 5th in the state. But Elmer meant so many things, and to me and my family, and I just love Elmer and love Pat, and they've been such a wonderful addition to our lives. And you know, their family and their son Kirk played quarterback at Florida State in the 80s, and I tell people I used to babysit him. You know, I came here in the summer of '65, and he and Pat would go out to eat or go to a movie or something. They'd call me, and I'd go over and babysit Kirk. So anyway, Elmer Coker was high school coach, and I loved him. I love him like I love Matt Mathis and Coach Wagner down in Apalachicola. They were just great, great people and all in the community. And you putting the flag on me. Okay, I'm sorry, Elmer, stand up.
That was not my first stop in Crawfordville. My first stop in Crawfordville was my senior year at FSU. I came down here as an intern. I was here for the intern period there. And then I was called, I went back to Perry, and I coached a couple of years over at CT Burgess, and then Matt called me, and I accepted the job here as coach at Crawfordville. I really enjoyed it, and made lots and lots of friends here. And some of them I still see occasionally. We have the class of 1966, we have a reunion. We've had, 5 or 6 of them since '66. And we're gonna have one the last Saturday in September. So I'm looking forward to that. I would like to tell you 2 or 3 things that meant a lot to me. And of course, now, I was a basketball coach, and I knew much about basketball than I did flying an airplane. And I will never forget this. I forgot who we were playing, and David was playing basketball, and we were tied, I think. And so I jumped up and called timeout with about 6 or 7 seconds to go. And about that time, David cut me loose out there for about 30 feet. It hit nothing but the bottom of the net when he went through. So I cost us a game. I don't know what we were, that's how I feel about that now. And I had some really good times here and made a lot of good friends, and still have good friends that I talk to occasionally and meet with. The Barwicks and of course David, and we've been close for a long time. And one of the most bitter losses I have ever been through was here. David told you about that one there, when we had won, 6 or 7 games, and went over to Wibwahitchka, and I had been warned by Jerry Johnson, who is the coach over at Bristol. He said, boy, you get ready, you're gonna get a shafting. Well, we did. We were up 21-7 at the half, and they outscored us, whatever it was, and we lost a close ball game there at the end of the game. And I will never forget this one. Of course, many of you remember Lloyd Polk. And Lloyd was one of my offensive linemen, and I heard him holler, don't spit on the ground, they'll throw a flag on you. And so, anyway, those are some things that I went through. And then I was there here for a couple of years, and I moved over to Mama Sultan Jefferson High School and was coach there for 7 years. And then I moved to Perry in 1974, which was my hometown, where I graduated from high school back in 1956, and coached there 10 years. And I find it hard to believe that I've been retired 32 years. And I haven't coached in 40 years, so it's a long time. But anyway, I just wanted to appreciate you inviting me here and to talk to you and see some of you that I haven't seen. Donnie Sparkman in the area. Have I missed anybody else there? I'll know, but I'll meet you in a few minutes anyway. So anyway, thank you for what you meant to me and to my family. Thank you so much, and I appreciate it. And I love you all.
I want to add to Elmer. Elmer went to Monticello, won a state championship there. Then he went to his hometown of Perry and won a state played for the state championship there. And there have been very few coaches in the history of the state of Florida that have taken a team and won a state championship at one school, moved to another school, and played for the state championship there. And if you go ahead and count, which I count, the mythical 1966 state championship, 3 schools, 2 state champions, and 1 runner-up. So what a great career Elmer had, and influenced so many people. And like I said, good Christian man. And Pat, great family. And I just appreciate them so much. And I had something else I was going to say, but I can't remember what it is. I know you have that problem. All right, thank you.
Okay, and I want to thank Mr. Matt's son, Eric, who played there also, is here. Eric, thank you for coming. And I want to introduce the panel to you, and we're going to start with Mr. Nelson on the end down there. And Mr. Nelson played ball here and coached here, and he's now one of our principals. He started out at River Sink as principal, and then Superintendent, Mr. Pierce, moved him down to Wakulla Middle School, and he served as principal there. I think he played for Coach Mudra, wasn't it? Northern Iowa, and as did one of our other panel members. I don't know where he's at. We're gonna have to throw a flag on him. He's supposed to be over here. Yeah, you're supposed to be up here. Yeah, we're gonna back judge you right up here. But what we want to do is, and he's got to leave before I introduce the rest of the panel, because his school football team is playing a ball game right out here right now. So he wants to be there as principal. That's where he needs to be. So have we got a mic that's working down there? So we want to let him tell us a little bit about your bio, Coach, if you would, and what it was that made you decide to go into coaching when you coached. Coach Simon Nelson.
All right, thank you. Coach Pierce said short and sweet. So, of course, same thing, grew up in this county, Crawfordville, Wakulla Middle School, Wakulla High School, like I said, University of Northern Iowa. I remember my first coach was Milton Watson at Crawfordville. So he laid that foundation as far as being tough, mentally tough, not necessarily physical, but mentally tough. And then, of course, as I gathered into Wakulla Middle School, always was surrounded by good coaches. Of course, need to say about the neighborhood we grew up in over there in Crawfordville. My best friend Derek Jackson, his dad Percy Manning, we played basketball there, so that was the foundation, that neighborhood. But as we progressed through Wakulla Middle School, had Coach Christian and Coach Price, and Derek and I, they used to cheat us in basketball every time. Miss Price, yes, I said that. and so then, of course, two men once again just kept us in line and treated us like young men, made us respectful, and not made us respectful, but made sure we kept that respectability. Then, of course, moving on to high school. When we got to high school, Coach O'Halloran had left. And so for basketball, it was Coach Golden and Coach Hernandez. And then in football, I had start off with Coach Metcalf, Coach Tomberlin, and who was it? And Coach Golden. Those three, football as well. And of course, everybody knows Coach Jones. Got there 10th grade, and I was spoiled. Coach Tomlin was hard and tough and everything, but I was spoiled when I got. So by the time I got to high school with Coach Jones, he acted like he was being all hard and stuff, but his soft spot was Miss Jones. So Miss Jones loved me. So I had typed in, and we was going on, so she would talk good about me, and I would, make sure I had Miss Jones, and so it was everything was smooth sailing from then. So my whole thing, and of course went on to graduate, but my thing that I do remember, and I think set the tone for me, like I said, I've always been surrounded by good coaches. They respect me as a person. Not once did they get out of the way as far as disrespecting me as a young man, where I had to, I guess, argue back or say something. Never had that problem. But the thing I think that got me moving was going through my senior year. I didn't get a lot of scholarships. offers. Really didn't get any. But one day I was sitting in the trailer, double wide trailer in Crawfordville, and Judge Carter and Darryl Moodra came to my house, knocked on the door. And I knew Judge Carter was, I didn't know Coach Moodra was, never seen him. And so they sat down and talked to me, and Coach Moodra offered me a scholarship on the spot. I was like, wow. And when I tell you that turned my life around, And I owe that all to Coach Jones primarily, but Coach Jones said it was one of those, if you perform on the field, I'll take care of the rest. I mean, if I perform in the classroom, he'll take care of the rest. And so he always looked out for me in that area. We butt heads a little bit on certain decisions he made. One game, preferably Shipley, but I forgive him for it. But other than that, like I said, that propelled me, and I realized that started my journey. My brother always, and my dad always thought about education, and I was never the brainiac. Randy was that. But once I had the opportunity, and that's what, when I came to start coaching, I figured my job was to be respectful to my players, teach them a little bit about manhood, responsibility, but also just try to give them an opportunity to be better. And so that's what my coaches, from Coach Watson, Coach Kristen, Coach Price, JD, Coach Golden, all those gave me an opportunity to be a better person. So, and that's what I instill when I try to coach. Can't coach today. Don't have the temperament to do it today. But I would like to thank, and they're here on this, now. And I forget about Mr. Anderson. He would spank me a lot. So, but anyway, that's my bio. I'm gonna try to get out here and get to this game. But this is great. Brent, thank you for inviting me on here. I appreciate it. And like I said, I'm one of those where these coaches have a lot to do in my life. And of course, Coach Pierce gave me the chance to be an administrator here in Wakulla, and I appreciate that. And he always told me it wasn't him, it's the work that I put in, and which I agree, but also the opportunity. That's the thing, you can work hard all you want, but someone has to give you an opportunity. Someone has to see fit that you deserve an opportunity. And so for the most part, my coaches did that for me, and I thank you.
Thank you, Coach Nelson, and appreciate the great job you're doing as principal of both of those schools. Keep on going. What I'm gonna do is kind of go through the panel now and let you know who's here, and then we're gonna give them a chance to answer what Coach Simon, Coach Nelson, Mr. Nelson, Principal Nelson did. Seated next to him is one of my former athletes, Bobby Pierce, and Bobby Pierce was a great athlete here at Wakulla High School, played football and played baseball. And he's also, a lot of these people that you see sitting up here are state champions. And he won a state championship in weightlifting. And so that was the reason for him being up here. And also because he's superintendent and has done a great job here in the school district. Is on his way out and turning the reins over to Mr. Meyer. Who, those of you that don't know who Mr. Meyer is, you probably know Judy Meyer, his mom, and Bob Meyer, his dad. Judy's sitting front and center right here. Both Judy and Bob are my assistant superintendents, but we wish you the best, Mr. Meyer. And he coached here also, and we wish him Godspeed. Next to Mr. Pierce is Mr. Robert Golden. And Robert Golden, whenever he took the job down at Top Shop, he gave me a chance to get in administration, and I took his place when he went to be principal down there. Robert Golden was a great coach. He coached JV football. He was head baseball coach the year before I became coach. And he was a great athlete at Rickards High School, and he was a great athletic director. And he did a super job. In fact, besides Coach Davis, who's the star sitting next to him, the basketball coach, Robert Golden had a team one time that ran into a buzzsaw with Ampley, I believe, was the player. Shipley, yeah. Was it played here, though, wasn't it? Played here, and probably would have gone to might have gone to the Final Four, but he did a good job, following in Jerry's shoes. Next to him is a Hall of Famer. This is Coach Jerry Davis. And Coach Davis was here about 5 or 6 years, and he's gonna give you a little more information about that. But he's a state champion, he won a state champion, and he can tell you about the athletes and all that he coached, but he's a coach that ate, lived, and breathed basketball. And it was his pride and joy. His wife got involved with him, helping him go scout and washing uniforms and a lot of different things. You know, she was a typical coach's wife, and she's also a great school teacher at Shadeville Elementary. And to my left is one of my co-principals. I enjoy serving with him, Randy Anderson, who was principal, and he has the distinction of being the longest serving principal in the history of any school in Wakulla County with 27 years. Just all around great guy, and he and JD were a great duo on the basketball court, and you should listen to what you heard a little bit David talk about, but I watched them play. They're just a tad older than I am, not much. I remember watching them play, and they were just fantastic, and I guess JD would put the basketball in play to Randy. Randy bring it down the court, give it to JD. JD shoot in the story, and he could hit it from anywhere. But they were a great duo. They were great in basketball, football, and some of the stories I heard about JD and Randy. I think they had telescopic or whatever it is when you talk mind to mind, telepathic. Is that the right word, Miss Meyer? Telepathic, and they know what to. Wilson could tell you about that. One time he thought he had it figured out, and Randy shook off the signal, whatever, and he beat Wilson for about a 30 or 40 yard game. But anyway, great athletes. Like I said, I mentioned another one, Ron Langston was also a great athlete at South Choppy. But he was a friend and cohort. We were principals together, and he was one of my biggest supporters as superintendent. I had great principals. So, and he's going to have a chance to talk a little bit. Next to him is the guy I call affectionately the head eagle, and then I cleaned it up a little bit. I used to call him the head bald eagle, and I could only do that when I was his boss. But what a career he's had, and he's on 3 or 4 Hall of Fames, and FACA Hall of Fame, FHSA Hall of Fame, Flag Football Hall of Fame. Had a wonderful record here, and he's going to speak in a little bit. And then, of course, after I introduce the next one, we're going to start with you, Mr. Pierce. We're going to go back down to this end. You ready? And on the end there is the mother of Wakulla High School women's athletics, Diane Aiken. And talking about trailblazers, she was one, and brought our volleyball program into being, and softball program into being, and just kind of did it all, and even went to the Final Four, I think, a couple times, and ended up runners-up. And a lot of these people have played or won state championships or played in them. And so, what a great panel and a great representation. And there's other coaches out there that did great things for Wakulla High School. And we're going to talk about trailblazers in a little bit. And Coach Pafford, you're going to need to come over here whenever we get to that. But I want to start now. We'll go back down the line again, and I want you to tell us your bio as far as your coaching bio at Wakulla High School, and tell us why you went into coaching. What is it that you influenced? And I'll turn that over to Mr. Peters.
I'm not going to do that. So, if anybody goes on Facebook tonight and says that it was hot in this auditorium, I'm going to come to your house. I'm going to come to your house. Coach Aiken, what does half-fast racing team mean? Do you remember that?
Oh, yes.
On your white van?
You remember that?
I remember it. Wasn't it Turtles?
Yes, it was a turtle.
Yeah. Half-fast racing team. Yeah. I remember that van. Parked in the dirt behind the gym.
Yep.
Yeah, yes, ma'am. I remember that. So real quick, I'm not gonna do a bio or anything, but I will say this, that, athletics are a vehicle for most people that play athletics. It's a vehicle, and it's a vehicle for wherever you're gonna go. And I've thought about it a lot over the years, and what I think the gentlemen that are in this room that influenced me, even David Wilson influenced me. He was never my coach, but I coached weightlifting and sat in the bleachers with him and learned a lot. Coach Tomlin was my position coach, and he was mean as a snake and made you tough. Coach Bell coached me in high school, and then I got to coach with him one spring when he was working at Wakulla, and we ran scout defense that spring. Coach Shotwell was my baseball coach, and then became my brother that I never had that was older than me. And all of these men had an impact. Coach Golden was my 8th grade, 9th grade position coach in spring football. Coach DBs, they had you doing DBs. Do you remember that? Yeah, he coached DBs. He coached a lot of different things. Coach Davis was my 9th grade football coach. He wore sunglasses, and we never knew who he was looking at. But he would give a name out. Mr. Anderson coached me up into being a principal. Everything I learned about being an elementary principal, I learned from him. And of course, Coach Jones abused me when I played, but then later on let me work with him, and I really appreciated that. He gave me an opportunity, like Simon was talking about. But I think what I loved about it, the coaches that I had, and Mr. Miller. Mr. Miller taught me a lot of one-liners for baseball that helped me later on. But all of these coaches taught me how to deal with adversity, and they created adversity. Athletics competition is nothing really other than adversity. It's the epitome of adversity. And they taught me how to endeavor to persevere, and how to prepare to handle adversity, and how to be tougher than everybody else. And I think it helped set a course for me that I probably never would have dreamed I would have gone down, and it gave me an opportunity to be successful, at least in my mind, because I measure myself, unlike everybody else on Facebook, I measure myself with a ruler. I don't have to have anything else other than that, and they helped prepare me to survive and make it in this world, along with my parents, and I'll forever be in their debt, because they set a course for me that I'm very thankful that I got the life I got to live to this point. So thank each and every one of you for everything you've done for me.
Thank you, Mr. Pearson. What a career he's had as superintendent. This new school that's going to be built, that I talked a little bit about, that you remember how much I told you this school will cost? $1 million. The new school is not going to be built for what the state has appropriated. They never are. They always raise it year by year because cost of materials goes up. The new school that he and his staff, Mike Ball's done a lot of work, that they're birthing, there's a good chance it'll cost 100 times what this one cost. It's going to be a facility that you can really be proud of. But the state, good thing is, the state's going to pay for probably 90% of that. I think the taxpayer piece of that's only about, we talked about 12 million, Bobby?
Yeah, but it won't be any new taxation.
No new taxation. He's still talking like the superintendent running for election.
No new taxes.
But in other words, it'll be built the same way that the new Shakeville was, the same way River Sink was, the same way River Springs was, the same way Medark was, the same way Crawfordville was. And the taxpayers will only pay 1.5 mills, which they pay anyway, to go toward that, and the state bills it for the difference. So I want to commend him. And if you haven't seen the new vocational program out there, it's unbelievable what they're doing. And Sarah Beth Jones's daughter, Sally Weaver, is running that program now, and it's a program that's going to be noticed statewide. I can assure you, there's no other school in the state this size or even bigger than this that have, no school in Tallahassee has that. They have Lively, but they don't have what we have. And she's gonna expand that, but that's another thing that Mr. Pierce pursued, and got BP oil money for that, and that was free. I think, Mr. Pierce, wasn't it? $20 million.
There was no taxation involved in that.
And we didn't pay a penny for it, it was billed, but it's really beautiful. I encourage you to come down and take a look at it. Okay, we're gonna move back down to the other end, to the mother of women's athletics here at Wakulla High School, Ms. Diane Aiken, and there wasn't any athletics for women until she came and she got it started. So we want her to tell us a little bit about her bio and what prompted her to go into coaching. Coach Aiken.
Thank you. How would that work? Let's try this. This will work? Yep. Yeah. All right. Excuse me. Well, I came here in 1973, and I took the place of an English teacher who was teaching PE. Because they didn't have a PE teacher, which I was really worried with being my first job that I would get hired, but I guess I was one of the only people that applied for jobs, so I'm glad I did. But in 1973, I had to get my feet wet first. I had 6 classes. I had all the girls in the whole school. And there weren't any athletics for the girls. Started out with softball. Mr. Coyle helped with softball for a while. And then in 74, I decided we're gonna have a volleyball team. I grew up and my whole family, I have 2 sisters who were all American volleyball players in college. And that was always very, very dear to me. So we got it started, and just getting the information and getting birth certificates and getting things like that from the girls was a little difficult. Boys seemed to have everything together when they were gonna play athletics, but there wasn't much for girls, not even in the community. So we got it started, and 3 years later, we went to the state finals in volleyball. And it was really, really exciting. But we were really not prepared. The basketball team lent us their warm-ups, so we would look a little professional when we walked out onto the court, which I thought was amazing. Thank you, Coach Davis. And we represented Wakulla in a very strong way. One thing, we were always the little team that could, because in volleyball, you have to be pretty tall to hit the ball over the net, because the net's 7 foot 4.5 inches tall. And our girls were about 5'5", 5'6", 5'7", so they could barely reach the top of the net. But let me tell you, Alicia Fordham could jump, and Suzanne Stevens could jump, and the rest of us played good defense, because we had to get there when the ball was coming back over the net. And some of the girls, it was their first time out of the county. So I felt like not only were we coaching and teaching volleyball, we were also teaching life. And that was really important. And one of the things that I can remember the most, that it's hard to forget, because these girls have stuck together all these years. In fact, they're going on a retreat next week. Is it next week? In 2 weeks. Thank you, Alicia. And they invite me to go once in a while, which I'm always honored to do. But we had a group of young ladies who really wanted to get out there and get sweaty, which is amazing to some people, because they were thinking, girls sports, what's girls sports? I remember the first year, the principal gave me $20 out of his pocket for extra gas money. There was no stipend, no anything for girls sports back then. And I ended up taking half of them home so I could go home myself, because parents weren't used to it. And parents weren't used to their daughters having to be at practice. We had to teach families how to do different things. Or beyond restriction, you still needed to come to practice because there were 10 other people depending on you. So we went through a lot of training and a lot of growing pains. But by the end, when I left in 1980, they were a powerhouse in the county. And not just in our county, because we only have one high school, but they were a powerhouse in the county of Leon County also. They took people to task all the time. Not only did I coach volleyball, I also had the cheerleaders and I had the softball team. And the thing I can remember, probably one of the most interesting things about the softball team was that I had to drag the field with my little Toyota Corolla station wagon. and line the field. So it was a good thing I had 6-period planning so I could get out there and do that before the games started. And another great time was that another baseball coach was not happy with us. We practiced sliding in a torrential rainstorm. So they got very good at sliding from base to base, but we kind of tore the field up a little bit. And with softball, we made it all the way to sectionals, which is right before the state tournament. And the girls just gave me everything they had. It was one of those things that you dream about, that when you're gonna have a team to coach, they're going to respect you and you're going to respect them. And they're gonna do what you say. Because girls were not used to being coached. They weren't used to getting yelled at. And it was one of those things that I'm not yelling at you because I don't like you, I'm yelling at you because you're doing it wrong. So, like I said, there was a lot of training, a lot of growing up, a lot of education involved in it. But I wouldn't have traded it for the world. When I left Wakulla, I went to Lincoln. And that was like a totally different experience than Wakulla County. And because Lincoln was a pretty new school also, and we went to the state finals then also. But the one I remember the most is the one with Wakulla, and I wouldn't have changed it for anything in the world. And the reason I went into coaching is because I'm the oldest of 6 girls in my family, and my father was a triple athlete in college. And I don't think he ever missed having a son because we all were athletes and we all played sports. And I wanted the girls here to get the opportunity that I had when I was growing up to play sports and find out what competition is and find out how tough you can be. And my favorite coach when I was growing up was my junior high school teacher. And she was tough, but she was fair. And that's what I try to be, was tough and fair. And I think it ended up pretty well, since they're still calling me when they're 60 years old. So, that's my story.
Okay, Mr. Smith, we got an extra chair down here for you, so you can come home. I'm gonna turn it over now to one of my fellow principals, Mr. Robert Golden, and had a great career here at Wakulla High, and enjoyed coaching with him. And he was a basketball coach, football coach, baseball coach. He did it all. Golf coach, that was your best sport, wasn't it? Girls track, well, that's your Bible, so I'm gonna turn it over to you, Mr. Golden.
I'm going to do a little bit different approach to this thing. I grew up in South Tallahassee. Went to Rickards, played athletic sports and Rickards. And one of my coaches got a job down here as the first football coach of Wakulla High School, Ron Henson. And when I graduated from college, he was the principal at Crawfordville Elementary. And I said, man, I'm not having inside track there. I might get a job. And so I came down here and talked to Coach Henson. Sure enough, he hired me. Elementary, I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't know anything about elementary. Let me go back to just why I got into coaching. I had finished up at TJC at that time. And I went into the guidance counselor's office and they said, okay, now you need to put down what you're going to major in and where you're going to school. I said, I don't know. And I said, well, I've always liked athletics and I've always thought I might be a pretty good coach, so I just put it down. That's what I was going to do, so that's how I got into coaching. And for the next 2 years, I went to University of West Florida, got my degree, and then came back and coached Henson High. But what I found out, and what I found out over the years, is that God puts me in positions to advance who I am and who He is. And when I came to Wakulla County, I found out something about the people down here, about the coaches down here, about the players down here, that I didn't see in a lot of other places. There was a lot of Christians in this community. And I tell you, when I got hired, the superintendent of schools was a preacher. Or if he wasn't a preacher then, he's a preacher now and has been for a long time, Mr. Payne. And I thank him for allowing me to come. But when I was on staff down here at Wakulla High School to start off with, a man I admired greatly, we rode together back and forth for years and years, Coach Tomlin, truly man of God. I look to my left and to my right, and I see godly people. And those people influenced who I am. And I want to thank them for that. But then I look around the community at some of the folks I see tonight that allowed me to be a part of this community, that are truly dedicated Christians and let me be involved in their life. And then I look at the guys that I coached. And I coached for 17 years, and I was an administrator for 18 years. So I spent 34 years down here. But a lot of the kids that I had, they came from families that if I told them to do something, they did it. And I look around today, and I can see a lot of places that that's not the truth anymore. And it's because of who they came from. And then I start getting into coaching, and one of my best friends that I've ever been associated with, met a long time ago, this guy right here, strong Christian. And he showed me some things about how to coach and how to treat people and how to treat players and what to do. Not just about coaching, not the X's and O's, but about being respectful to who you have that you're working with. And a lot of places I look back over my years now as I get older, I could have never gotten that. So Wakulla County, because God has placed me here and kept me here and allowed me to be a part of this here, has influenced me more than I probably have ever given back to them. And I want to thank tonight, and I've never done this, I want to thank Wakulla County for allowing me to be a part of who you are and working with your kids. I want to say there's two in the coaching realm, okay, since we're doing this. Two of my favorite times of coaching. One was when I was working with Coach Starmerlin and Coach Metcalf on the JV team. And we had some great JV teams for about 4 or 5 years in a row. And that was the most fun of coaching football. Those kids just did whatever we wanted to, and we worked them hard, and we won games, and we won a lot of games. And that was a fun. Thank you, Richard. I appreciate that. And the other time, he left, but Derek is still here. That basketball team I had that year, I'm not sure what year that was. You remember, Derek? 88. They were the kind of kids that you could just say, okay, here's where we're going to do it. You ought to go out there and do it. And they could do it. I'd throw out a little bit, they'd learn it, they'd do it. And we won a lot of games, and we came within 2 points of going to the state tournament. And we had the tournament over, we had that regional, I guess that would be sectional tournament. Sectional tournament in our gym, and it was packed. I mean, you couldn't get it. There were people standing around the outside. They couldn't even sit down. It was full. And I was always pretty loud about when I was coaching, but they couldn't hear me because it was so loud in there. And I could tell you some stories, but I'm not. But the story is that those guys made me so proud of them and made such an impression on me that I have never forgotten any one of them. And I appreciate them, Derek, appreciate you, bud, and Simon and James and all the rest of them. And that's what I got out of coaching, and that's what I hope that I want to express to you how much it has meant to me because of the people that I've worked with. And that's what I appreciate the most.
Thank you, Coach Goldberg. And, Coach Smith's back up here. Okay.
No penalty back there.
And no penalty. There's a referee. He'll throw a flag on you if you're not careful. Next, I'm going to turn to one of my good principal friends here. And some of the best years of my life was being a principal. It's kind of lonely. Mr. Pierce, Mr. Meyer, sitting in that superintendent's chair, but you got 4 or 5 principals around you that you can rely on and you can talk to them. And he was one that you could always talk to. He'd lift me up, and I respected him as an elder. And, he's just all around great guy. Not that much older than me. Not that much older than me. But what you see up here is a lot of examples, and one's already left, of where coaching may possibly lead you to. And that's in the administration. And that's a lot of commonality you see with some of these speakers here. But I want to turn it over now to my good friend Randy Anderson. Like I told you before, the longest serving principal in the history of Wakulla County at 27 years.
Thank you, David. Got me on now? Is that the wrong one? It's on now, okay? All right. I tell you, it seems like it's December 15th or 16th. It's cold in here. And I promise not to be very long because I'm liable to freeze to death in the process. But I tell you what a blessing it's been to be here already tonight. And there's just so many things I could share with you tonight. But my coaching career wasn't but 2 years here. I got involved in coaching. I did coach basketball for 2 years and just enjoyed it. And also I was football with defensive backs and Clayton Wooten and Jerry Reynolds. I had the privilege of working with them under their leadership and just great experiences with them. But the thing about it, I want to give the credit to Mr. Payne again. He called me on a Sunday night, right after I got home from church, and he said, Randy, tomorrow school starts. He said, can you teach music? I said, well, I sing, and I studied music a little bit. I can do. He said, I said, what you got in your mind? He said, we don't have a course teacher. And I said, well, he said, well, could you think you could teach a course? I said, yes, sir. What time do I need to be there? He said, be there at 7:30 in the morning. So I showed up. And so my first year of working here at the school, was doing that. I was a teacher there, had a great time, had good people working with. We had a good concert in the course and all, and did a lot of good times during that time. But also, I began my administrative career in 1994. After I got my master's, I began to teach sent me to Crawfordville. Now here I was a Sop Choppy boy, and I told him, the previous superintendent, I said, I'm not sure just how that's going to work out. Sop Choppy boy going to Crawfordville. But I'll tell you what, they treated me just great. And everything worked out good. I was there for 17 years as an elementary principal, had wonderful faculty, staff, parents were very cooperative and helpful, and it was just a blessing altogether. Then we were fixing to build a new school down here in Medard, and Roger Stokely, a superintendent at that time, he called me and asked me if I would be interested in going down to Sop Choppy. And I said, well, I love it here at Crawfordville, but I'll do what you want me to do. So I wound up going there. I was principal there until we got the building built, and then I went to Medard where I finished out my 33 years. And I tell you, I just really enjoyed it. It was such a blessing working not only with the superintendents, the parents, the principals all around. It was just a blessing altogether. Getting back to the coaching just very quickly. One of the things that I memorized, I really remember more than anything else, is in our 10th grade year, JD was in that group. We went to the state playoffs and got down there and was playing Laurel Hill. Walked into the University of Florida's gym. Of all things, they had glass backboards. I didn't have any glasses at the time. I couldn't see the backboard. I told Jamie I didn't know what was going to happen. First, we warmed up for about 10 minutes. I'd hit the bottom of the net, but it was in front of it. I didn't even come close to ringing the thing. But anyway, we wound up playing. We wound up getting beat. If I could have hit, I'd probably done a lot better. But we had a good time. It was just a blessing being able to go as a 10th grader to the state playoffs. But we just had a great time. And I enjoyed JD was a quarterback in high school whenever we played. He threw me 19 touchdown passes. And I asked him after the game, why didn't you throw me one more so I could have got 20? He said, I didn't want to. And so that's the way I was treated there. I got the message. But we had a great time. It was just a blessing to work for the Wakulla County and the school system. Being an athlete here, that was a great, enjoyable time. And I'm going to end up with one other thing here. When I was in the 4th grade, I lost my dad. He passed away, got killed in a tractor accident. And we, the night before he got killed, though, he talked to me about drinking and smoking. And he said, son, it's 2 things I'd encourage you to not ever do. And he told me both of them. And I said, Daddy, I'll honor you and do that. And so I never have taken a puff out of a cigarette, never have taken a beer or a drink. And I don't brag on that. I just say that I had a devotion to my daddy, and I wanted to live more of a Christian life, living for the Lord and serving Him in that way. But one of the things my daddy asked me, though, before this happened, first day of school, I went to school, come back home, and Daddy said, well, son, did you find anybody you knew? Or did you see somebody you liked? I said, yes, sir. I said, I saw a girl with a long black tall ponytail. And he said, well, what's her name? I said, I don't know, but I'll tell you tomorrow. And I married her later on, and we've been married for 56 years. What's over the 6 months for you?
Thank you, and I remember a time when 5 of us principals were sitting around with Mr. Stokely, and he decided he didn't want to run, and he challenged the principals, And he said, I'm not gonna run, but I think the next superintendent needs to be one of you five. He put a lot of trust in his principals. He tried to hire good principals, tried to give them direction and all. And he said, but get together and decide who it's gonna be and support each other. And that's what happened. And this guy here could have been sitting in the chair I was in, because I told him that if he wants it, I'd support him. And this is a true story, y'all. And he said, well, I'm gonna talk with Nina about it, I'm gonna pray about it, and I'll let you know. He's very active in his church, and that meant a lot to him, and he knew what the superintendent would entail. So he called me the next day, and he was the senior principal. And I told him, I said, if you don't want it, I think I'm ready. So he called me the next day, he said, I think I'm gonna talk with Nina, I think I'm gonna give it a pass. So he supported me, and the other principals supported me, and that's how I became superintendent. So I got him to thank for giving me that opportunity. I'm not sure I'm any better off mentally for taking that opportunity, because it is a stressful job, but I thank him, he's a good friend. And now, you didn't throw another flag on it, but he's down there. So we're gonna go to a quarterback, who Coach Jones coached, and he and I talked many times about great athletes. And I had a chance to coach one, and I've often told Coach Jones the two best athletes I've ever seen play at Wakulla High School was Jeff Posey and Mike Smith. And three-sport athlete, he could do it all. I went on to Northern Iowa, won a national championship, runner-up. I was close, but there's champions up here, not me, not inclusive. There's champions sitting up here, and we're missing one tonight. Coach Jimmy Duggar, who won 2 weightlifting state championships. I wish he couldn't come, and he couldn't, but a lot of these people up here because they were state champions. But I'm going to let our athletic director, Mike Smith, who was an outstanding athlete and quarterback of that 81 state championship team. Cheers, Coach.
Thank you, sir. The last quarterback to win a state championship.
Amen.
Yes. Like Mr. Golden, I'm going to take a little different approach to this. I think it's important that we think about how we got here. Each of us has a different path that we came through, and that we came together at Wakulla High School in Wakulla County and did the things that we did and are still doing for the community. And we make it work. That's what I think is important. You come together, that's what coaching is, taking a group of young people, setting a goal and reaching that goal. And that's the legacy I think that coaching has on young people in your community throughout our country and through the world for that matter. For me, I moved here when I was 10. I really started my career, I guess, as a freshman here. When I came here in 77, it was still 7 through 12, so there was no middle schools. So, I'm 12 or 13 years old and I'm going to school with 19 or 20 year olds, and that changes you in terms of how you approach a situation when you're walking through the hallways. Not like now, it's a lot different. After 30 years, I'm in my 31st year here. So, I think for me, what I'd like to do is go through, I can go back, and here's to me why it's important that kids are involved in athletics, and what you pull from that is this. I can remember every one of my coaches from the time I was 10 years old, 50 years ago. I can name every one of them. A lot of them are sitting right here, all of these coaches. Coach Bell, Coach Tumblin, Coach Tanner, Coach Jones, Coach Anderson. He paddled me. Coach Anderson did. Coach Jones did too. I met when I got a D. I don't know if I got that one D one time. Mr. Miller coached me. Coach Davis. They're all coaches. I can name every one of them. I can go back to Coach Metcalf. Mr. Caraway coached basketball here. David Caraway was a math teacher here. He was also my Sunday school teacher. So you grow up knowing that. Coach Tomaney. In high school, I had the Deep South head coach, offensive coordinator, and a New York guy as my defensive coordinator. And Coach Tomaney I know he would never let me play defense, Coach. I didn't get it, but they would talk about it. And so there's a balance there. And those things that you pull from that and keeping, your mind right and keeping on the straight path. And sports gives that to us. Like Mr. Anderson, I lost my father at a younger age. I was 14, and that changed me. I don't even remember my freshman year, but because I had athletics and I had coaches looking out for me, they kept me where I needed to be. I came to school. A lot of kids in the same situation now. Life hasn't changed that much. It's gotten a little harder, a little more difficult. One of the things that I've talked about with some of my other coaches and friends is I had a realization that these kids today, I remember, when you're younger, you think your parents, the world's coming to an end. All right? Every parent generation says that. These kids today, everybody's used that. These kids live in their time. We lived in our time, and what a great time it was for every generation. All right? Sports, you can take it from the 50s all the way to 2000. That hasn't changed. You have coaches that are mentors. You have coaches that take kids home every day. You have coaches that go and pick kids up and bring them to school. Okay? That's what, to me, is the importance of the athletics, not just at Wakulla High School, because it's a great tradition. It's those connections that we've made that have lasted, like Diane said, for 50 years. Okay? Those are the important things to me. All the rest is X and O's. One of my mentors right down here, Mr. Tomaney, Coach Tomaney, he told me, and I hope I never forget this, he said 90% of coaching is getting the kids to want to play for you. If you can do that, the other 10% is the X's and O's. And the 90% is really more important because the 10% will take care of itself. Okay? So I could talk about myself, and I don't really want to do that. I had a great career. I'm continuing with that as an athletic director. I have great coaches around me. That's why we are successful. Not because of what I do. It's because I help them get the opportunities for our kids to put them in positions so they can be successful and give them everything that they need. Along with Mr. Pierce, coming up with Mr. Meyer, our administrative staff is unbelievable at the district level. They support everything that we do. They give us what we need the majority of the time as best they can. This new facility is going to be unbelievable for us, and it's going to, I hope, project Wakulla even farther into the future for athletics and the history of Wakulla, long after we are all gone. So I think the thing that I would probably leave everybody with, for me personally, is that I probably am not here without athletics. I'm somewhere else doing something different, and maybe not even alive still. And I think there's a lot of kids and people out there that fall into the same category. And I think all of my coaches, parents that support their kids, former players, all the way through the whole school system. Whatever part that they play comes back to athletics. It's a huge role. Band, that's something, band is part of sports. We have an unbelievable band program. Always had. Mr. Perigo, you remember Mr. Perigo? Mr. Perigo was an unbelievable band director. And I remember him being out there. He was dedicated, and he's part of that program. He's part of that. And I think just the connections that we make are what's important, and we keep those connections going, and we remember why we're all here, and that's to make ourselves and our kids that participate better. Thank you.
And then there were two state championship coaches, so we're going to ask Coach Davis if he would talk to us now a little bit.
got to concur to you about it's cold in here. And, back when I was here, I came here in '75 and stayed to '81, but if it got cold in here, all I had to do is go open them two doors right there, and all the heat from that gym would come in here. So there was no such thing as there. In fact, there was no heat in there. And you play basketball games in there on cold nights, and we had two people here that supplied us with, it looked like jet engines. And about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, we turned them all in both ends of the gym, it just looked like something coming out of the jet. Out there to heat the gym, you hope by game time, by 6:30, it'd be warm enough to play. But there's a couple things, me and my wife, Maria, she's with me, and I spent 48 years doing this. I retired 5 years ago. And Maria started down here in Shadeville with Mr. Mathis. And I was at Rickards High School for 4 years, and then Mr. Golden here, we were taking a class at Florida State at night, and he asked me about would I be interested in the basketball job down here. And I was kind of questioning because I had seen Wakulla play. When I was at Rickards, we went to scout Florida High one night. Wakulla was up there, and the varsity game wasn't real pretty. But what I remembered, there was 3 or 4 pretty nice 9th graders on the B team. And I kind of punched the guy that was the head coach at Rickards, and I said, hey, you know, those kids could play for us right here at Rickards. I don't understand what the problem is. So that went through my mind. Those kids would be 10th graders for next year. So I come down here and interviewed with Mr. Pelham. The worst thing I had ever done in my life. We didn't say one word about basketball. We talked about how we'd handle this situation, do this and do that. And after about 30 minutes, I wanted out of there. And I figured he was fixing to send me packing. And about that time, he told me, he said, okay, Mr. Davis, he said, nice to meet you. And we cordially shook hands. He said, if you want this job, he said, you go by the county office up there in Crawfordville and sign your papers. And I'm kind of like, you gotta be kidding. And then I come to find out, and I believe this or not, I had his daughter in a badminton class at Rickards High School. And she'd go home and talk about how nice Coach Davis was and what all the great things that he did for her. And I'm kind of trying to remember who she was. But anyway, that's what it worked. But one thing that has crossed my mind, Sock Chop is well represented in here. And it might be because of Mr. Anderson and Mr. Jones being here tonight. But I was told something out there a while ago, and it's on JD. And I want to bring this up because it was kind of funny. And I'm sure he'll remember it. But he was in a history class in high school, and he really didn't want to be in there. But he was having to take the exam. It was a history test. And the teacher had brought him and a girl in and had told JD that he had caught him cheating on the test. And he kind of said, no. He said, I wasn't. He said, I studied for this test. He said, well, he said, you know, the first question was, who was the first president of the United States? And he said, you put down George Washington. And he said, yeah. He said, I sure did. He said, I studied for this thing last night. And he said, I knew that was the answer. He said, well, you got that right. He said, well, number 2 was this. Who freed the slaves? And he said, that was Abraham Lincoln. He said, you got that one right. He said, yep. He said, I studied really hard. He said, I got that one. He said, I knew it. He said, well, here's the problem. He said, on this third one, this little girl next here, I asked who the president of Russia was. And she wrote on her paper, I don't know. And JD wrote on his paper, me neither. been here twice since I left here. And one of them will come down and watch the sectional game Robert played, and a few years ago, come down here and played the golf tournament with the coaches and come by here. But the day I walked in this gym, I'd never seen it before. The first day I walked in it, the ceiling was falling apart. I mean, everything in there was just cracked, and it was awful. The floor, not the floor, but there was paint nowhere to hardly be found on the walls. And I found this out after 48 years of education. It's hard to go to your principal or superintendent and say, hey, we need y'all to come in here and paint these walls. And they'll say, well, I don't know about if we can do that or not. But you say, hey, I need 10 gallons of paint to paint them walls and a few brushes. Well, go down there to Sherman-Williams and get you some. So it's not a problem getting it. It's just a matter they don't want to hire anybody to do it. So between me and my wife, we scrubbed all these walls down in here and painted the whole gym. I got on a scaffold, went through the whole ceiling, scraped it down, and that was as good as it got, except Mr. Pelham that summer. I already finished summer work at Rickards, and he asked me if I wanted to work again this summer. And I said, sure. So he set me down in the bleachers, gave me a pad, a yellow pad, and a pen. He said, we got some gentlemen fixing to come in here in just a minute from St. Petersburg, and they fix to start tearing this floor up. And he said, I want you to watch everything they do. And from that day forward, that gym floor is going to be yours. So that meant that I got to learn to paint it, to seal it, and to buff it out. So for 48 years now, that's what I've done in basketball, but I learned it right out there. That was the first thing I ever done here. But the next thing I remember is coming in here in that auditorium and sitting down right out there with 24 basketball players, 12 varsity players, and 12 JV players, scared to death. Because what had happened, it was a Monday. What had happened that Sunday, I gave my life to Jesus Christ. Well, I had pretended from the time I was 20 to 26, I just played a game. I did. I went down one night at a revival when I was 12 years old because all my buddies went down. But as far as it being a commitment to the Christ, no, it was not. My wife, I fooled her for all those years. But that day I broke down in church and made that commitment, changed a lot of things in my life. Well, that night, when we were sleeping, getting ready to come back to work the next day, she woke me up about 2 o'clock, punched me on the shoulder. She said, Jerry, you got to tell those ball players what you've done. I said, hey, you know what? They've done seen me in action. They've done seen things I say to them and the way I act and so forth, and there's no way they're going to believe this. And so the first thing we come in here that day at practice, I brought them in. I said, y'all go on in and sit down in the stands in the auditorium right up there. I can see exactly where we were right now. And I told them what had happened. And I said, boys, I'm going to change. Things are going to be different. Fall season is going to be good, and so forth. Well, when we first started this little adventure down here, we went 15-10 the first year. We lost our first 4 games and lost one of them by 60. And I'm kind of like, I don't even know if this is what I want to do or need to be doing. And maybe I just need to be an assistant coach. Well, that was the thoughts that went through my mind. Well, from that day forward, we won 20 ball games every year, and in 1980 won the state championship. But that changed everything, because at that point in time, we were ranked for the first time about number 7 in the state. We were like, I don't know, 11-2 or something like that. And all of a sudden, after I talked to him that day, we went on a 5-game losing streak. And one of my ball players come to me and said, Coach, said, you told us things are gonna be different and things are gonna get better. We're not seeing it. And I said, well, you gotta just leave it in God's hands. He's gonna take care of it. Well, believe it or not, we were in the toughest conference probably in the state of Florida in basketball. We were in there with Havana, Port St. Joe, and Bluntstown, who had all won state championships, and Havana won several of them during my first 10 years of coaching. And we hadn't even come close to beating them. But that year we beat them, and we won that conference championship that year. So some of the things I said, maybe they struggled with them, but I always felt like down here you could say what you felt as far as Christ. And I started listening to all these other coaches and stuff, and it was getting to the point now, you know, back in the 60s, they took, you know, the prayer out of the church schools, and you couldn't do this, you couldn't do that, you couldn't play. I mean, it's to the point you can't play national anthem. And that just really disturbed me, but I've never been in a school where that mattered. I never was in a situation where I was confronted with it. So I was always able to pray with them. They got where they would pray about things with me. And I just enjoyed that aspect of being here. We had some really nice ball teams, great kids, just unbelievable kids. And down here, I know at Riggers, you know, you wasn't allowed to spank them. This is back in the early 70s. I get down here, and I know I'm up there with Mr. Pelham one day, and he calls up a parent and says, hey, I'm gonna need to spank your son right now. So he's really done, you know, something he needs to whip for. He said, man, he said, don't be calling me. He said, that's why I sit him up there. Y'all take care of him. And I'm kind of like, hey, this is where we need to be. So I knew I was in the right place, but of all the things that happened, everything, of course, the state championship, that was a biggie. I mean, we'd never even thought, we'd never won a district. The last thing about winning a state championship, we won the district, region, and the sectional. Won the sectional game out there in this gym. I didn't even know where the ball game was going to be that Tuesday of the game. I thought we was going to Chipley to play. And then I come to find out later in the week, the game was going to be here. So I felt pretty good about it. We went on and won that ball game, got down to state tournament, and got to play the defending state champion the first ball game. They had two guys that were 6'8", and we had one that was 6'3". And I thought, this is not going good at all. And so the first half was a blur. And we were down by about 17, 18 points. And I cannot tell you what happened in the second half. All I know is we ended up winning the ball game by about 10 points. But I can't remember what happened. And we catch a team in the finals that's got, you know, a 6'9" kid that ends up going to Florida and makes all the SEC for 2 years. And got the #1 point guard in the state. Well, the only thing is that 6'10" kid fouled out in the fourth quarter late in the game. We had never led in the ball game, period. We tied it up at the buzzer and went to overtime. We scored. They went down and rushed it. We got the rebound, come back down, held it again. They fouled us. We made the free throws. We win it. But I had a point guard. Now, not a point guard. We had a manager, David Selleck. I don't know if anybody remembers David Selleck, but this is something about him. He drove a little old bitty car. And he parked it behind the gym when we got ready to, excuse me. And he parked it behind the back of the gym. The only problem is, it was a little bitty fella. And the driver's door would not open. And the kids, as a practical joke, would always pick his car up and sit up against the wall. And so he couldn't get in his car. But David got so excited at the end of the ball game, when we were just about assured to win, he ran on the floor. Now, that's supposed to be a technical foul.
And I panicked. I mean, my blood pressure was like 200 over 150. But I remember about that as much as anything about that ball game. They gave us a tape on it, not a tape, but a disc or something that was over the radio. I don't even know what you call it, but anyway, I lost it somewhere during time. So I really don't remember much about all that, except here's what I remember. This is what I'll remember about Wakulla County forever. We went to Busch Gardens that Sunday, took them there, and I can't remember who I was talking to back here. But they had decided they were gonna put on a big canoe down here in the cafeteria that night for us to arrive to. And in fact, they even canceled the churches they could get a hold of for their services night, because we're gonna get in about 6 o'clock. And after we got through at Busch Garden, we took our time coming on in, and I'd call every so often, she'd tell me how it was going and how far along they were. I told her, look, it's gonna be about 6:30 when we get here. She said, we'll be ready. She said, people are starting to gather right now. Well, David Caraway and Louis Hernandez were my assistants, but David Caraway was my bus driver. And David had kept that pedal down all the way on that school bus coming through town. And I told David, I said, look, I'm telling you something right now, the school ain't gonna pay for a ticket. You're gonna have to pay for this thing if you get caught. And I said, the way you're driving, something's gonna happen. Well, coming on down here on 98, when we crossed the Wakulla County line, blue lights come on. I said, I told you, David. I told you what was gonna happen here. I said, when you get back, I don't know what it's gonna be for driving a school bus over, but you're gonna pay the fine. Well, he comes out, the blue light comes out and comes by, so you can see him in the window there. He's saying, come on, come on. And so now we realize, hey, we got an escort. All the kids on the bus are asleep. They wake up. Then a county sheriff's car jumps in behind. He hits his. So for the next 14, 15 miles, we come in. They're with us. We come in. Biggest crowd, just about like a football game. They were all over the place out here and all in the cafeteria. And that was really an exciting night for all those kids. And it was really just a great show of the support you had down here. And I'm gonna say this. I've been in 5 school systems. I don't guess that's many for a coach in 48 years, but by far, this is the most disciplined, well-organized county I've ever worked in. And it's because of you. And I'll always remember this, and I always remember what happened, and I always remember how y'all supported everything down here. And I told JD when I come in earlier tonight, I said, by the way, I said, you don't even know this, but you won me $50. And I said, he said, what? I said, the year I left to go to Jackson County to Grand Ridge High School, I said, y'all played Graceville, which is in Jackson County, in the first football game. And they had what was his name, Neil Anderson. Graceville had a kid named Neil Anderson. Well, we happened to be having some kind of a coaches meeting or something at the school. And anyway, I was just kind of standing around. And they got to talking about, how bad Graceville was going to be Wakulla in that football game. And I'm kind of sitting there a little bit, I'm thinking about that thing. And I just made the statement, I said, I've heard a lot about Neil Anderson, but I said, can they do anything but run the football? He said, they don't have to do nothing but just run it, so they ain't got to worry about passing. I said, y'all gonna get y'all's butt kicked tonight. Because I said, y'all ain't gonna run the ball on Wakulla. And so one guy said, well, I bet you $10 we do. And I said, I'll take that. And the way I felt about it, I wasn't really a gambler, but this wasn't really gambling, this was just stupidity. And so, anyway, it ended up, before it was over with, that next time I saw him, I collected my $50 on about 5 bets. So I appreciate what you did, JD. Thank you. But I've really had a great career. And up at Grand Ridge, we won 2 state championships. We made it to the state tournament 5 other times. That's one thing about it. I've been there a bunch of times, but we won it 3 times, but I never got to the finals in any of the others. I just got beat, put out my misery, and we went home. So that's kind of interesting. But anyway, I left there, went to Ponce Leon because they told me I wasn't gonna have any summer work. I told them that's not gonna work, because I gotta feed a family. I got a bunch of people over here that wants to eat. And they said, well, we're gonna let the assistant principals do what you coaches have been doing. And I'm kind of like, well, what have the assistant principals been doing if they can start doing what we do? And they didn't have an answer for that, but anyway. So that's the reason I left Grand Ridge. We had a great thing going, had a powerhouse. We felt like we could just about compete with anybody. And then went to Ponce Leon. That didn't turn out good at all that first year. We won 7 games. And but I had them all back. Next year we won 22 games. And then superintendent over in what's Chip Lynn? Washington County. He called me up and said, Coach, he said, you want $15,000 raise? I said, sure. And I'm down here in my last years before you retire. And he said, well, can you drive 15 miles for $15,000? I said, sounds good to me. So I went to Vernon. And that lasted about 4 years. And for some reason, Maria, she always kept up with the books and everything. She said, we got more going out than we do coming in. And I said, well, tell you what I'll do. I said, I'll just go ahead and retire from Florida after 33 years. And I said, I'll find me a job in Alabama that pays me max salary for my year's experience. So we ended up going to a small school, Pleasant Home, in Andalusia. And I stayed there for 15 years. It was not exactly a basketball power. We won 4 games the first 2 years. But now the last 4 seasons I was there, we won over 20 games and won our district all 4 years. But now the interesting thing about all this is, and believe it or not, I've coached just about everything out there. I love football. I love to X and O it. I love to do all that. But it's just hard to do that, and then you got to prepare for a basketball season. And down here also, shoot, JD and them, they were playing all the way through December every year. So, I mean, half my basketball schedule was gone. But they really did a good job. And I know what it took for them to do it. And I know y'all appreciate it. But I ended up having to coach virtually every sport the girls played over the last 20 years or so. Our girls coaches got pregnant. And so they'd always come, hey, Coach Davis, would you coach the girls softball team? Sure, I'll coach it. So I go out there and we get it done, and then all of a sudden it was, Coach, well, at least the girls coach come to me, she said, Coach, she said, I'm pregnant. She said, can you take this team? I said, sure. And then all of a sudden we realized we start playing football at Pleasant Home. So that gives us, with Title IX, it gives us 3 boys sports and only 2 girls sports. Well, they decided what we're gonna do. We're gonna pass around a ballot and find out what girls sport they would like to play to all the girls. And they ended up voting on volleyball. Well, guess what? There's not a volleyball coach at Pleasant Home. Nobody knows anything about it. I got a daughter that's in the 10th grade. She says, Daddy, why don't you coach it? You're not coaching football or anything. I said, yeah, I guess I'll do it. So I know nothing about it. I know that put that net up. I know it's a pain in the butt to take the thing down. Right? Yeah. So I found that out real quick. But I didn't enjoy getting beat. I'm just pretty competitive about things, and we were getting beat bad. And we also happened to have a school called Kinston in our district, and they won about 4 or 5 state championships. And I mean, our games would last maybe 30 minutes. That's about how long it took them to beat us 25-4 and stuff like that. But I kind of got into it, and I started getting a hold of other coaches that knew something about it. And believe this or not, I ended up falling in love with volleyball. It's a great sport. It is. If you ever come out and watch them girls play, I'm gonna tell you something. That's something. Hey, that's as good as it gets. If you got 2 good teams playing. Well, I coached it 8 years, and we ended up going to state tournament for 5 of them. Never won it, but we got there, and that was a big deal, especially. And then when I retired, lo and behold, them girls won the state championship. So it's just a matter. We had all that talent all year. They just need somebody that knew what to do. But anyway, I've had nearly 28 kids sign to go on to college. I've never had a Division I player. But my last 3 years, I ended up coaching girls basketball at Pleasant Home. And you may not know what it is, but I coached a McDonald's All-American. She was a 6'5" girl. And she was, as I call them, she was a studette. She was a really, really good high school player. She signed with Florida State, and I had nothing to do with that, even though I'm a graduate of Florida State. But she signed with Florida State, stayed there 3 years. She transferred to North Carolina State. And then this past year, North Carolina State played the national championship game for basketball, for women's basketball. She was the starting center for them. So I'm very proud of that. But like I said, I have really enjoyed it. I have not enjoyed the last 10 years of education. It has just gone south. And you need a lot of prayer for us, all I tell you. Public schools are struggling. And Florida is ahead of Alabama. I mean, it took me, when I got up here, it took me about just a few minutes to understand Alabama's about 5 years behind Florida. So, you know, like I said, need a lot of prayer. Some things got to happen in this country for things to change, for our education system to get back, because it's turned too far south. And I don't know if they say they get the education they used to or not, but I don't believe it. We got too many, you know, everybody's on calculators and stuff. You can't even go up McDonald's and give them a $10 bill. They got to punch in them buttons there to try to figure out they got to give you back 27 cents. And, you know, that's just where we're at. But I truly enjoyed being here. This has been a great experience. It started out my career, and you know, there's a lot of things individual happened. You know, I'm not gonna go into it as far as what I did in high school or so forth like that. But it's been very successful. I got into coaching because I got injured and couldn't play no more sports. But I wanted to be involved, so that was the next step, was to get into coaching. And so I've had a great time of it, and I appreciate y'all putting on this show tonight. And I got thin blood, and I'm cold.
Okay, we're getting close. Y'all hang in there. Got a legend as far as Wakulla High School sports is sitting right here. And we've got another one sitting right here, J.D. Jones. So I'll finish with that. There's a couple other things we want to mention. Coach Paffer's going to come down, and Coach Delaney. We're going to talk a little bit about Trailblazers in the sports here, but we're going to, after Coach Jones speaks, we're going to try to bring it to a close. Coach Jones.
Okay. First of all, I don't know if I'm nervous or that cold. Randy just said I was cold, but I think it's a combination of being cold that. Let me start with saying that I've got to correct something, to start with Randy. I didn't throw him that 20th touchdown pass because when he came to stop chopping, he took my girlfriend. And that's the truth. But anyway, a little bit about Stop Chopping, I'd like to say. And we had one coach that coached all three sports, and we all loved him. And later on in life, I realized that he might not have been quite as good a coach as I thought he was with some, but he did a great job. But in football, we were pretty good, and we threw the ball more than anybody probably at that time. So we had a lot of passing yards, a lot of touchdown passes, and they come out with All-State. You know, boy, I'm excited looking at the paper. Well, my name's not in there. Randy makes All-State. Rondell Nichols makes All-State. My name wasn't in there, but that's okay. I got over that. But then in basketball, I scored a lot of points, but all the time in every game, at least 10 points was a layup. Because and somebody said it, I knew when Randy was going to break for the ball. And when he started breaking, I was already down court, and I just got my little easy layup. So I appreciate it. But we had a great time. And another thing about Stop Chopping, so in the 8th grade, I think it was, I talked Randy into going out for baseball. Because I was going to go out for baseball. Well, guess who sat on the bench? Me. Randy started a left-handed shortstop. Anyway, he was a great athlete. Do what? Yeah, well, he did. Wakulla, I'll get started there. David mentioned something earlier about, I think it was David, about if your wife isn't into your coaching, it's going to be hard to coach. Well, I coached a head coach for 29 years. My wife missed 3 games in 29 years. 2 of my kids were born in September. So, is it September? Yeah, correct. Which is football season. And then 1 in May, which was a spring game. But that's the only 3. So I had a lot of support there. And Wakulla's been very successful in football. But when I got the job, the coaching staff that was already pretty much set up was David Miller, Buddy Tomaney, Richard Tumlin, Jimmy Duggar, and it was really, I think, a toss-up for me to get the job. But I've said all along, I think if any one of those other 4 had have gotten it, Wakulla would have been just as successful. Because I started off with just a great coaching staff, and you have to have that. Also, I don't think there's a better place in the world to coach. You're talking about a 1-county school, you're talking about great kids, and you're talking about when we traveled, we had more fans than the other team almost all my whole coaching career. I mean, it's amazing. Wakulla still really travels good. And it just makes it a lot easier to coach. And the support from the administration was always unbelievable. And for that reason, Wakulla has been very successful. You know, I've had a few coaches that come in and just didn't like it here. One guy, I think his name's Ricky Bell, coached with me and got mad with me. And you know, Ricky left to be a head coach. But then he didn't like it at Quincy. So he called me up and said, JD, I hate it over here. Can you get me a job? I said, Ricky, I can. I said, I can't make you a coordinator, but I can get you a job. And so he came and went through spring with us and was sitting right back there. We just talked about it in pre-planning. And he looked at me and said, JD, I just got a phone call. Gene Cox just offered me the defense coordinator's job at Leon. I got to go. I said, all right. So anyway, a lot of great coaches, you know, came through Wakulla. I want to mention a little bit about the history of Wakulla. First of all, there's been only 6 coaches in 57 years. Not one coach has ever had a losing season. We've had 2 that were 500. But, so the total scores, total wins in 57 years is 439 and 186 in 57 years. But in the last, 47 years, oh gosh, I didn't bring my glasses, I didn't do it, but we're 379 and 148 in 47 years. So it's just, Wakulla is just a good place. The football program has been, unbelievable here. I think one of the things is asked why we got into this profession, whatever. But I've heard this, y'all probably have all heard it, but if you do something you love, you never work a day in your life. And that's definitely me. I mean, I enjoyed it. I loved it. The day I got out of it, I actually got out of it. But the 33 years that I coached, I loved. In those 33 years, I coached football, basketball, weightlifting, and girls softball. My sort of claim to fame is that in all those sports, I never cut one kid, which is sort of hard to do if you coach softball, but I never cut one. I just said, if you stay on the team, if somebody quits, I'll give you a uniform, and I'm not going to cut you. And then the other thing is that in whatever more, I had it down here one time, 317 games that I coached as a head coach, we were only shut out 3 times. FAMU, believe it or not, David and I remember when they had the 2 guys that both went to Florida State, FAMU High School. They shut us out. Rickard shut us out one time, and Swanee shut us out one time. But some of those were close 3 points game, but still wasn't a shutout. And something I wanted to mention earlier is my first 6 years by far our best years with the state championships and all. But in those first 6 years, we had 60 wins. 30 of them were shutouts. My defense coordinator, Buddy Tomani and David, if you can shut out 30 out of 60 games, your chances of winning are pretty good. So anyway, he did. It was unbelievable. So we contribute this, and Buddy does. But when I got the head job, in my first year, Daryl Muser was in my press box. I mean, I know a lot of people, whatever. We loved him. You're talking about just new football, but Buddy and I would go to his house, sit down with him. This is 16 millimeter, 4 computers, and break down film. And when he got through and you saw that piece of paper, you wouldn't believe it. There's lines everywhere. And then he'd say, Buddy, on first downs, they like to do this. On second down, they like to do this. On third down. And it was amazing. And then, of course, Buddy continued that after, but one time, I called him and said, we got a big game, coach, can we come over? I called him, his wife answered the phone, and she said, I'm sorry, he's going to pick my parents up at the airport with me. And she said, nah, he'd rather stay here. And so he stayed and went through it with us, and which, like I say, was a big help. One of my, I guess, things I'm most proud of maybe is I got to coach both my sons, which is unbelievable. I got to coach with my daughter 4 years. And we talked about earlier, she won 4 district championships. Whatever. But anyway, all these other, some of them been other places. I was here for 33 years coaching, 36 years total. Love Wakulla. I don't think there's a better place in the world to coach, teach, bring your kids up. And I thank everyone that's been a part of our success here at Wakulla. Thank you.
Okay, Coach Spafford, if you come down, we're going to talk just a little bit. 15 more minutes? We're going to talk about some trailblazers here, and I want him to come down with Coach Tomani. and talk a little bit about that, but, Brent wanted me to talk about trailblazers. And this is my perspective. I'm not gonna do my bio. Y'all be bored stiff. I can't compare with these guys, I can assure you. I'd have to say some of these, and JD, I know you're gonna correct me if I'm wrong, but I'd have to say Rick Smith in starting the weightlifting program was a trailblazer, and that paved the way, and it's still paving the way for our success in athletics. Another trailblazer would have to be Buddy Delaney with wrestling. We'd never had wrestling before. We'd have to go to Mariana, and we might get a match at St. Joe. Nobody in Tallahassee would wrestle. And so he started the wrestling program, went and bought a mat where he wrestled at Troy, and was an outstanding wrestler there. And I'd have to say Diane Aiken was a trailblazer with girls sports and getting that started. It took a lot of courage, and to take two teams and be runner-up 2 years in a row is outstanding. Like I said, I'm up here sitting beside legends. I feel honored. I'd have to say Dave Price and what he did in tennis and the courts and getting that program started. That was a trailblazer. I'd have to say Paul Hoover in cross country would have to be a trailblazer. And of course, getting a track program started, I'd have to say Richard Tomlin was a trailblazer to get those programs started. So if I had my list of trailblazers, Brent, that's who I would suggest. And so I want to take just a couple minutes to let Coach Pafford and Coach Demaney talk a little bit about, we're going to need a microphone down here, about the wrestling program.
So Coach Demaney started the wrestling program 1976, 1977. He wrestled in college at Troy University. And the interesting thing about that is he started the program in 77, and since then we've had 77 state placers. Wrestling team has had 10 state champions: Parrish Barwick, Darren Harvey, Jacob Marin. Desmond Kaiser was a 2-time state champ. Scott Varner was a 2-time state champ, and Shad Washburn was a 3-time state champ. We've had 7 top 5 finishes, 2 state runner-ups. The wrestling room is named after Coach Demaney. Without Coach, it would have never happened. And all of the wrestlers that have been able to come through, we all owe him a debt of gratitude. It wouldn't have happened without Coach. And he allowed that sport to come here. Coach Demaney also worked with Coach Bob Murphy. They were a part of the best 10 years of the program during the 90s. During those years, they had 7 top 10 finishes in the state. And of those 10 state champions, 6 of them wrestled during those 10 years in the 90s. Coach Demaney, I would have never gotten a chance to coach here without you. These kids would have never gotten a chance to wrestle. We all owe you. Thank you so much, Coach.
And the best story on that is I remember the first year, they didn't wrestle in Leon. So Coach Demaney had to go everywhere and get wrestling matches. And finally, they got a program started. And I remember it was such a big deal when Godby had the first state champion. Never mind that Buddy had probably 6 or 8 or 9 or 10. I don't know how many state champions. But it was like, it's like the sun had exploded in Tallahassee. They had a state champion. It was such a big, it was also ran down here. We had 1 or 2 every year. It was such a big deal. They had a wrestling tournament named after this kid that won the state championship, remember Wilson, at Godby, and they still have that today, celebrating their state champion. Now, they've had others since then, and Lincoln in particular has had a good program, done real good. But definitely a trailblazer there. Just a couple tidbits. We've had some facilities named after individuals. First of all, copying a little bit on what JD said, there's only been 6 head coaches in the history of Wakulla High School. 3 of them are deceased. They're gone. Ron Henson, Jerry Reynolds, Clayton Wooten. And then we had Rick Smith come in, was here 2 years. JD was there 29 years. And I took a resolution to the board to name that stadium after JD because the 17 and a half years that I was superintendent, I never had one person come in my office and say, you gotta get rid of that coach at Wakulla High School, that football coach. They may have thought it, but they didn't have the courage to come to me. But I said, anybody that can be coach in a small rural county that eats, lives, and breathes football deserve to have the stadium named after him. So we did that. And of course, Scott Cleese now followed him. So when he finishes this season, we've had 2 head coaches in 47 years. This is his 18th year. And, anyway, one of the most tragic things that happened to us was Jerry Reynolds passing away. And I remember I did a little internship before I graduated and came down and coached with him. I can't remember who he had on. It was Wayne Richardson and Randy, and who else was it? You remember who else y'all had coached? Richfield Coach Tomlin, yeah. And enjoyed that, but he was shaving one day and cut himself. And it wouldn't stop bleeding. And I bet it was not a month later, and he was dead, leukemia. And it shattered this community. And so some efforts was made under Mr. Payne's leadership. Thank you, Mr. Payne, for all you did. And I think maybe kids might have been involved in that, but this field wasn't named after anybody. So the decision that Mr. Payne took to the board was to name that field Reynolds Field. And so they did. And they said, well, you know, we had some issues, because a lot of you want to hold it up, Andy? See the back of it? That was a jersey on the first football team. You probably can't see it, but our colors were crimson and gray. We were the Rebels, and the fight song was Dixie. And that did not play well in our community. And under Mr. Payne's leadership, just naming that field Reynolds Field, some of you don't probably even know this, was step one. Step two was saying Reynolds is an English name, and in that country, last names have a crest, a family crest. Y'all familiar with that? Do this. It'll warm you up too. He had a family crest, and in that family crest was an eagle. And also, the eagle is the national bird. So, under Mr. Payne's leadership, said, well, you know, if that's the national bird, what's the national colors? Red, white, and blue, right? The flag. So, the colors shall be. And then the board members got upset because a school had just formed in Tallahassee, North Florida Christian, and we were bitter rivalry. There was a bitter rivalry, wasn't it, Richard?
Yes, sir.
It was a bitter rivalry. And so some of the school board members says, oh no, not just no. We're not going to be called the Eagles. That's what North Florida is. And Mr. Payne did his best. Who is it that says, not so fast, my friend? Lee Corso. Mr. Payne does his best. Lee Corso says, not so fast, my friend. That's not a normal eagle. That's a Wakulla war eagle. And that's a true story, and that's how it was changed. And kids accepted that, and it was a good thing to do. And it created a lot of tradition and a lot of pride. So the stadium was named after JD. They already mentioned the wrestling room was named after Lady Tamani. The track facility. Now, those two are living, thank God. The rest of them are gone. The track facility was named after Paul Hoover. Mr. Pierce did that. And the baseball field named after Houston Tabb. And the tennis courts was named after David Price. And we've had other coaches that have contributed that aren't here today, that have deceased. Roger Stokely followed Houston Taft as the baseball coach, and he coached junior high football. was a great superintendent and led us to high marks. And another coach that I enjoyed coaching with and being in the press box with and scouting sometimes. Bringing back the Havana Scout Report. You want me to do the cheer now? No, I better not. And that was Rick Meyer's dad, Bob Meyer. And he's passed too, but he coached JV football, weightlifting, and we scouted for JV sometimes, and I think he scouted all the time. And we were also in the press box, I think, for both state championships, and that was an honor and a joy to do that. But I'd have to say that if I had to pick the four people, the four coaches that meant a lot to me, that helped me chart my desire to be in coaching, the first one would be Matt Mathis, without a doubt. You know, I was there one year and I sat in that chair. I thought Pete Shayfield, I wanted to be down here, and he knew that because I was coaching kids down here, and I wanted to be around the athletes. And he said, "Go back and get your degree, and you can sit in this chair," which is at Shayfield. And about 7 years later, I did just that. I back got my degree. The other coach that influenced my life was sitting right here. Coleman Coker is another legend, and I didn't play a whole lot for him because I wasn't talented enough, but I learned a lot from him, and that's where I learned to eat ice. Remember, we didn't have water breaks. He brought ice for us to eat. That's how we did. That was probably cruel and humane punishment, but anyway, he was another mentor for me. Ron Henson, who I played for in high school with this jersey, was another one, and then I'd have to say Houston Tabb, who I played for, and it was four men that were very successful, and that's how I got my start. And I think we're going to bring it to a close here. And Brand, if you've got anything you want to say, I want to thank you for coming. I thank you for honoring all these folks, and we've got coaches sitting here in the front row. And could you introduce any of the coaches that are here? Coach Smith?
Coach Sanchez over here, he's a wrestling coach. Is that it?
No? You got Anderson?
Oh, Coach Anderson just retired last year. He was our coach for 18 years. Baseball, had his best season ever going out. And Wendy Taft's back here. She's girls weightlifting. And
that's Houston Taft's daughter.
That's Houston Taft's daughter. Miss Beth's there too, I believe. Is that Miss Beth? Yes. Okay. Coach Sally Wheeler's right here. We just went to our first state championship in softball 2 years ago. Came up a little short, but it was a great experience.
Plus, she played in a couple.
She played in 2 Final Fours, 1 Final Four, 2 Final Fours for me. We went 3 times. I was fortunate enough to have great teams. And I don't see anybody else. See you guys.
And Coach Davis talked about Mr. Pell and his daughter sitting right out there.
Yes, Miss Sandy Pell's right there. She was a teacher here. I had her for English, my junior year, I think.
And Mr. Thurman, we've already talked about him. He's the only man that's been principal of Wakulla High School twice.
I will say this, Mr. Miller, there was one coach program, I would be remiss, Bob Wallace started our soccer program here, and it was co-ed. It was 86, I believe. I was gone at that time, but right? Is that right, Mr. Gold? Does that sound right? But he started the soccer program here. He coached that. He was the only coach until recently. He did that for 33 years, and just a great coach. He was a science teacher. He would drive the bus. He lives off 90, still up there, off Highway 90 up there. He would drive the bus, go to a game, come back, drive home, and be back at 7:30 every day. He did that for 30 years.
And also Chad Linville was within a whisper of going to the final.
Yes, they were close. Absolutely. Soccer program is very successful, yes.
I want to just wrap up and say, first of all, I'm not a very good referee, so I'm not going to pursue that as a future. Second of all, I actually did come up with an inspiration for another program, which I'd like to have here if we could. We're going to do a program on hog killing because it's cold enough in here. But see, in all seriousness, thank you for coming. You may not know this, people measure success in the athletic world in different ways. And we have an Olympic gold medalist that lives in Wakulla County. But I'm telling you, these are hometown heroes. These are the type of people that really make a community throughout the generations. And I'm just so proud of this community. I'm proud of these guys and ladies that have been trailblazers and have done some amazing things with the young folks here, and in some cases, generations of young folks. I pray you all have a safe trip home, and if you haven't joined the Historical Society, we'd love for you to be a part of us, and have a good night. Oh, this thing only took like 74 minutes when we worked through the time for it, and we left some stuff out, so I'm also not very good at math.
And there's a picture of the mythical state